So, how to deal with criticism. This is definitely a very relevant topic, and one that comes up daily, especially nowadays with interaction on the internet, in which people can be especially candid, shall we say, when they're hiding behind a username and not interacting with somebody face to face. Then you can really get hit with some zingers and some oddball perspectives, or just things you didn't expect, or whatever, especially when you're making videos and putting them on YouTube, talking about various controversial topics. So how to deal with that? How do you not let that screw up your day, and yet perhaps learn something in the process? So, just something to throw out there. I don't know if this is true or not, but it could be said that there are two different types of people who genuinely do not give a crap whatsoever what anybody thinks about them. And they are the fully enlightened individuals, whatever that means, and psychopaths. Now, I think it's safe to say that most of us are somewhere between those two extremes, and we should care to some extent what others think about us, what the reflection we get back from other people is. That is a very important element of getting to know ourselves better, and to coming to greater awareness of how we're interacting with others and how we're just dealing with the world in general. So I'm not an advocate of don't care what anybody else thinks of you. But instead of finding the proper balance, which is so often the quest, which is to not form your identity around others' perspectives of you, that you have to get approval of everybody in order to feel okay, and that who you are is a matter of what other people think about you. But to be able to take into account others' opinions and perspectives while still having a strong sense of self and doing what you want to do, and being who you want to be, without letting the opinions of others dictate to you who you're going to be and what you're going to do. So there are a few different ways to deal with criticism, when whether it's in person or online or however. And so one extreme would be someone writes a critical, disparaging, seemingly insulting or disrespectful comment, and you go into ultra defensive mode and come up with all the right reasons why they're wrong, and come up with a long list of why they're totally screwed up and have no idea what they're talking about. The other extreme would be to, one would be just to ignore it. That's certainly a valid way of dealing with criticism. Just don't get caught up in it. Another extreme would be to capitulate to that person and be like, okay, I'm obviously completely out of line, and I'm so sorry, and what was I thinking, and be like this. The way to deal with criticism is to look at that particular circumstance as it is, and decide in that moment how to deal with it, because it might be best to ignore it. They might be right that you were totally out of line and just being unconscious, and you were being a jerk, and owe them a good apology. And they might have been completely out of line, and you might have some good points in your discussion with them. Alright, so this is a few days later on this video. My battery died in my camera here. But just to continue with where I left off, basically my suggestion when it comes to dealing with criticism is to read it with an open mind, and genuinely consider maybe this other person's perspective that they're sincerely offering has some truth to it. Maybe it's just the tiniest little nugget and the rest of it is bullshit. Who knows? But oftentimes we can read somebody else's criticism and just immediately react to it, brush it off, think it's all, it's all coming from ego. It's, this guy's totally whacked out and totally off. And then perhaps later at some point we look back, we come across that comment, or we think about it later, and we realize, oh, there was some, even if they weren't completely accurate, or even if they were kind of exaggerating or something, there was some truth there, or maybe even they were completely right on, and we were the ones that were totally off. And so just to consider it with an open mind, and from a place of self-love and non-judgment, of adopting a point of view of approaching your life as if you are seeking to see your own faults, and recognizing that it is in the seeing of your own faults that you make the biggest leaps, that you make the greatest steps in self-evolution. Are oftentimes when we see that blind spot in ourselves, when we see some aspect of ourselves that we hadn't realized we were operating from, and then we can change it. And that's where the perspective of others is very crucial in offering that alternate view on ourselves, so that we can consider our actions and our words and how we're relating with others, how we're approaching things in a somewhat different light, and then make some changes as a result of this greater awareness of our own way of being. So criticism from others has a place. It's preferable if people are kind of at least a little respectful about it and considerate of the fact that you're talking to another person here. Just because it's online doesn't mean it's all just computer chips. There are actual people on the other side there who are receiving these words, and so to keep that in mind, that your intentions will be much more effective if your intention is, I want to give this person something to think about, because I think they're off here. That your words are going to be much better received if they're expressed from a place of kindness and constructive criticism, as opposed to name-calling and full-on ripping someone up and being demeaning and dehumanizing. That's guaranteed to just put up most people's defenses and not lead to anything productive or helpful. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.